What's going on, golf addicts? DB with the Tour Junkies. It is the Tour Junkies Golf Show on the Better Sports Network, and I'm back. Last week, Pat, you had the reins for the Wells Fargo. You did fantastic. I've
Oh, well, I
heard nothing
appreciate
but
that.
incredible reviews. How did it feel?
It's a little awkward. It's a little awkward being by yourself, trying to, keep the conversation going with yourself.
Yeah.
But it was good. And we had a great week at the Wells Fargo in Charlotte. So I was excited to get there and be with you for that. And we had a great champion too. So
Yeah, I mean, it's not like you were, it's not like you were that much by yourself. You had freaking Carl Paulson on
I
for
did, and
15
he was
minutes,
great.
me on for 15 minutes. Like, let's not act like you were Colin Cowherd and you talked by yourself for 3 hours.
Well, yeah, but still.
Okay. Well, I was trying to give you a compliment, and then you turned it into something that you didn't actually do. So I'm not going to let that stand. We
My
did
goodness.
actually have a good week at the Wells Fargo. You joined me. We had fun. We did the media thing. We walked around. We had a great day Tuesday and Wednesday. Saw some stuff. Saw some people. Talked to some folks. Got amongst it as our guest coming up in just a few minutes. That's right. The Sleaze, Drew Stoltz, the host of Golf Subpar with Colt Nost, as well as Gravy and the Sleaze on SiriusXM, is going to be joining us here very shortly. We're going to have a great conversation with him. He's one of Wyndham Clark's best friends, and Wyndham Clark takes down the Wells Fargo Championship. And boy, Pat, if I don't know that I can think of a more bittersweet win on the tour for me personally, because it's really all about me. And the reason I say that is because I have become very much a Wyndham Clark fan. And
I don't know where this comes from.
what are you talking about? Why?
I've been talking about Wyndham Clark for over a year now. As a matter of fact, in the DFS world, I was the original, Wyndham Clark guy.
I don't think you can prove that at all.
I want to go back and find a clip somewhere.
Okay. Until you do, that is not true. You're just making up stuff.
That is not. I'm not making it up. No, I'm not. You're making up stuff.
You can't prove that that's the case. I have been all over Wyndham Clark this entire year in the last 8 months. Okay. He's been
I'm going
on.
to go. You know who's going to be good at this? I'm going to go into the Nut Hut and get screenshots and show them to you. I'm going to say, who was on Wyndham Clark first? Who talked about Wyndham Clark the most back in the early days of Windy?
Okay. Well, I still think you're wrong. But I have been the most, maybe if you were the first, I have shown him the most affection of late.
Yeah. All this I.
Yeah.
Either way, let's move on.
I mean, and I'm saying it's bittersweet because
this would be like Luke List not being on your betting card.
Exactly. It would have been like had I missed Luke List at Torrey Pines, and I didn't.
But you missed this.
I didn't have him on there, and neither did you. And I mean, the best shot I had was Tommy Ladd, who continues to play fantastic, but not fantastic enough. And gosh dang it, man. But it certainly feels like Wyndham is a force. And I think for some people, he may be a force that's somewhat come out of nowhere. But I think this guy has staying power on the PGA Tour right now. I mean, I did this on an Instagram video on Monday, comparing him to Max Homa. Saying like, hey, look, I did some research. Like Max Homa, got his card, lost his card, came back, won the Wells Fargo in his first PGA Tour victory, just like Wyndham Clark. It took him 66 starts to do it, Max Homa. In leading up to those 66 starts, he had 3 top 10s on the PGA Tour. That's it. 3 top 10s in 60-something starts. And then Wyndham, this was his 134th start, almost double the amount of starts, but had 15 top 10s leading up to this. Like, you could see it coming. It seemed like it was there. There were just little moments here or there that would cause Wyndham not to quite get it done. He finally closes the door. But with his ability and his game, Pat, I mean, don't you see that this guy could be another Max Homa kind of guy that took a minute, late bloomer, and now here he is, and he's about to come bust the door down on the PGA Tour?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. I mean, when you think about Wyndham Clark and you mentioned, that kind of like Max Homa, I mean, he has all the tools. He has all the tools in the tool bag to be, one of the best golfers out there. When you just look at his game and everything out there, his ball striking, his putting, all the things. So it'll be interesting to see what Drew Stoltz has to say when he comes on here in a little bit, just because he's so close to him. I know he'll have some good insight on, Wyndham and kind of how he's got to this point. But yeah, I agree. I think, at this point, the floodgates could open for Wyndham, just like they did for Max Homa.
Yeah, I think it could happen now. The one thing Max Homa has not done to this point is play well in majors, contend in majors. Wyndham Clark, 80-1 right now to win the PGA next week at Oak Hill. Thoughts on that?
I mean, DB, listen, you gotta put him on the card, or maybe both of us have to put him on the card, but he's got to be on there, okay?
Because the thing about Wyndham's game is that, like, the dude hits it so freaking far, and he putts it so well. And the only thing that has been missing is the iron play, and it's now hit. And that is the modern PGA Tour player that you need to have to be able to contend in any major. Like, gone are the majors that you just, you can kind of bun it out there at average and hit, and hit, these little, I don't know. No, I'm looking ahead at Oak Hill. I've done some research already ahead of the PGA Championship at Oak Hill. You got these Donald Ross greens that are pushed up, have severe slope coming off of them in every direction. And you better be coming into those things with short irons and high loft. And it's not a short course. So you know who's going to get to do that? Guys who hit it a long way. Guys who hit it high. Guys who can hit an 8-iron 190, like freaking Wyndham Clark.
He's also a good. I mean, he's very creative as a player anyway. So when you think about Donald Ross, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is creativity. So yeah, I do think you got to have the tools. Like, you got to be able to bomb it out there at Oak Hill. You got to be able to hit these greens. But then if you miss them, you really have to be creative. And Wyndham certainly has that. So I think that's another thing. And when you think about 80-1, I mean, I believe there's a lot of value there. I just think it. If this had been any other player, that is, I don't know. I'm trying to think of who I could compare him to other than like Max Homa, but like who hasn't won, like Wyndham just won, that would, be at 80-1. I mean, he probably didn't move all that much as far as the the odds are concerned. So,
yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. I'm excited about Oak Hill next week. We'll obviously have a full preview of that. We'll certainly be recapping the Byron Nelson a little bit next week, but I could see us having a very short Byron Nelson recap
especially if KH Lee wins again.
Especially if KH Lee wins again.
Really short. So.
I mean, yeah. Speaking of KH Lee, we'll get to the Byron Nelson preview here in just a second. We're going to take a quick break, but I mean, I just, I couldn't be happier for old Windy C, but I am sad that we weren't there to be involved and to get amongst the victory party that is Wyndham Clark. But we're going to talk about the Byron Nelson here in a second. But first, we're going to take a break and bring on our friend here in just a second, Gravy. I'm sorry, not Gravy. Sleaze. I get them confused. But you know what? Colt, obviously, if you were going to look at him and be like, one of them's Gravy, one of them's Sleaze, you would look at Colt and be like, that's Gravy.
Yeah.
But in my head, I just messed that up. We're going to get Sleaze, Drew Stoltz from Gravy and the Sleaze and the Golf Subpar podcast on here in just a second on the Tour Junkies Golf Show. Stay right here. Coming back on the Better Sports Network.
So I grabbed DK Metcalf. I'm very, very curious as to hearing all three of your guys' takes on the Seattle situation now that they took Jackson Smith and the Jigba, and where we see the target distribution going as far as this goes.
Yeah, the way I look at it is this. Jackson Smith and Jigba just became Chris Godwin, where when Chris Godwin joined the Bucks, they had Mike Evans and they had Deshaun Jackson. And Chris Godwin would come in and play slot in 3 wide receiver sets, but then he would come out of the field for 2 wide receiver sets. I think that's exactly what happens early on with the Seahawks. You have Metcalf and Lockett, JSN coming in. Lockett's 31, though, in September. So, like we saw with Chris Godwin, once he became the man in 2 wide receiver sets, it was wheels up. That might happen this year, might happen next year, but I don't think a guy like Metcalf is ever coming out of the game, so I have no problem with that pick here still.
Yeah, I just at the current ADP for like Jackson Smith and Jigba, I think it's a bit rich. You could probably see him coming off in like the 5th, even the 6th round. But Seattle ran the 6th lowest 11 personnel last year. I just worry when he's going to get on the field. Granted, he is going to get rotated in. There's going to be times where maybe Lockett's out and he comes in or something like that. But they do run a lot of 12 personnel with 2 tight ends. So That's what I worry about with Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think he's a great dynasty pick. I just can't imagine him getting on the field too much where he's going to be able to pay off that specific ADP.
I agree completely. And then from another total wild card perspective, they got Charbonnet. So how hard are they going to establish the run versus how much are they going to pass? It's just so many questions in that offense.
Making you money in daily fantasy sports and golf betting. Tour Junkies on Better Sports Network.
Best ball season is here, and we're helping you draft winning teams on Fantasy Alarm and the Better Sports Network. Check out our first best ball fantasy football draft featuring some of our top analysts like Howard Bender, Andrew Cooper, Britt Flynn, and Corey Parson, now playing on YouTube at Fantasy Alarm and Better Sports Network. Learn winning draft strategies and find out which players you need to have on your fantasy football teams this season. And get in the huddle and start drafting best ball teams on your own on Underdog Fantasy. Visit fantasyalarm.com/Underdog Fantasy and use promo code Fantasy Alarm when signing up to receive a 100% deposit match up to $100. Use promo code Fantasy Alarm. Pat, you and I, big Underdog fans. We play Underdog all the time. They got some good PGA best ball drafts going on over there as well, and you can obviously do the pick 'em each week. But we're not here to talk football. We're not here to talk Underdog. We just wrapped up kind of recapping the Wells Fargo and Wyndham Clark and how we just missed it, and it just really hurts. It still hurts, and we're gonna keep just jabbing it in with one of Windy C's best buddies, better known as the Sleaze, the co-host of Gravy and the Sleaze with Colt Notes on Sirius XM, and co-host of Golf Subpar Podcast with Colt Notes. We're talking to Drew Stoltz. What up, Sleaze? How we doing? Handsome as ever you are.
Boys, pleasure being on with you guys. Thank you for having me. What a hell of a week to do it, too, right after Dubs. Enormous win down at Quail Hollow. Also want to compliment you on the read leading into the show. Very well done. No stumbles, no nothing. True professionalism. Love it.
If we are anything, it is professional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
I can tell.
It's a good thing I didn't have to do the read. That's all I can say.
Yeah, you can make an ass of yourself real quick in some of those things.
Sleaze, who does most of the reads for you guys? Is it?
We chop it up. So like on radio, he'll do hour one, I'll do hour two. And then on the podcast, it's just kind of whatever. Like once you start reading one, you kind of, you know what's coming. So it's a little smoother. I feel like if the same guy reads it. So we just kind of mix it up. Yeah, radio, it's hour one, hour two type stuff. And then occasionally they slide in these crazy ones with some names and stuff that I'm just like, then we kind of do like tic-tac-toe for that, like, or whatever, paper, rock, scissors. You take this one.
I do want to talk a little bit about you and Colt and some behind the scenes, maybe some relationship stuff. Me and Pat have been doing this a while. You guys have been doing it a while. I'm curious there, but I want to talk about Wyndham first. I guess just maybe for those who don't know, I mean, you guys are great pals. You've caddied for him before. I guess maybe give a little bit of the background on Wyndham and I, maybe something. A lot of people got to see a little bit of the backstory with Wyndham Clark, as CBS did a great job covering it. But I'm sure, you can even speak more to that. So I guess just for those out there that would like to know more, tell them what you know.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've known Dub, man. I've known Dub since he was a little kid, honestly. So I'm a little bit older than Wyndham. But, coming up, he was from Denver. I was from Fort Collins. Our parents actually kind of knew each other in a roundabout way. And so as I started getting older, I was kind of playing in all the Colorado stuff, all the AJGAs, all the national stuff, and Wyndham was just coming up. He was just a young kid kind of just getting into it. So we got set up by our parents, basically. I went down to Cherry Hills to play with Wyndham. He's like, hey, my son's going to be doing a lot of the same stuff. Why don't we introduce the kids? They can kind of talk a little bit about what it's like. So Dub and I went out and played, man. He was just a little kid at the time. Went and played Cherry Hills, and we had a hell of a time. And from that point forward, we just kind of stayed in touch. He would talk to me about what tournament should I play in, what should I be doing, that sort of deal. And we just built a relationship. And, man, it's been, all the way through. I mean, from the time he was starting to get recruited, to various colleges around the U.S., he's like, hey, what'd you look for? What should I be looking for? That type of stuff. And just, he's just one of my closest buds. He moved to Vegas after he turned pro, graduated from college, was Vegas for, not that long, a couple years maybe. We kept in touch. I was like, what are you doing up there, dude? Come down here. There's so many players. The weather's just the same. If not better. We got great courses. You have so many more friends here, so many more games you can get. Not that Vegas is bad, but Scottsdale is just kind of like a hub. And so then he moved down here, and he just lives right down the road from me, man. And we've stayed close friends. Like you mentioned, I caddy for him once a year. Just started like on this roundabout thing. I was like, put me on the bag one time, watch what happens, And sure enough, he did it. He gave me Colonial, which is that's the one I picked because A, Fort Worth, I went to TCU. I actually know that golf course, and B, is definitely one of the easiest walks on the PGA Tour. There's not one hill, and from green to tee, it's about 15 yards or less on most of them. So we've done that a few times, and I can't say enough good things about the kid, man. He's loaded with talent, as I'm sure you guys have talked about. Like from a physical standpoint, I've said before, I think he's top 10, top 15 in the world. There's just not many guys that can do the sort of things he does with the golf ball. It's just getting his brain figured out, getting his brain to believe how good he is, the same way the rest of us have been telling him for years. And it was so awesome to see it finally click for him.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, you mentioned, his brain. So like, what is, we've been talking about Wyndham for the last really month and a half, 2 months, really this year. I mean, his game has just been trending towards where it is now and getting that win. Was that really the main thing for him, was just getting his mind right, getting his mind, wrapped around the fact that he could win out here? Or was it something else about his game that's really just improved over the last, 6 months that have gotten him to this point?
I don't think there's anything physical that Wyndham's changed in the last 6 months. It's like, oh, that took him from where he was last year or the year before to now a winner on a monster venue on the PGA Tour in a designated field against some of the best players in the world, right? I mean, that looks like a major championship field, more or less. It was just getting Wyndham to it's the same thing any golfer goes through if you play golf for an extended period of time. You're going to have valleys, and you beat yourself up, and you become so hard on yourself that, like, you're your own worst critic. I've used this comp before, but it's extremely similar to what Max Homa went through a number of years ago, right? We go out and play with Max here in Scottsdale, and he looks like a world beater, right? And I'm like, what's the deal, man? Like, how are you not winning? How are you not contending? What's missing? Nothing's missing, because I've seen the guys that went on tour. You do everything they do, if not better in some regards. And Wyndham was in that exact same place. But when it's just not clicking, you're not getting the results that you feel like you should be getting, and you're putting in the work and you're putting in the time, and it's just not working out. Like last year, I'll use this as an example. I caddied at Colonial, and we were in perfect shape. Like, we were playing fine. He wasn't playing great, but he was playing fine. We were 3 or 4 shots clear of the cut line on Friday afternoon. He had made like 1 bogey on the entire week, and we're playing the front 9 there. And he goes through, and you could just feel him like tightening up. It was like all of a sudden a different guy. It was like playing to not miss a cut, as opposed to like if we made like 2 birdies coming home, we'd be in. They was so jammed up, like we'd have been in the last hour of tee times the last day. But instead, he was thinking about like making a cut. He started getting conservative, started hitting some tight shots, missed a few left, irons off the tee into the trees where we'd have to punch out. And he ends up bogeying like 4 of the last 5. And missing the cut by 1. And that was just kind of like, man, it was so hard as a caddy too. I was doing everything I could possibly think of to try to get him through that. But like, there's a perfect example. It's just like, I think other players in that situation, or Wyndham right now, instead of thinking like, oh, let's just get it to the house, let's get to the weekend, he'd probably be thinking, man, if I birdie 2 or 3 of these last few, like I'm 2 shots back, I'm a shot back, things like that. And I think it really came together on 7 this past week on the par 5, where, he got the good bounce off the tree, went into the fairway, ends up making par from like 207 yards, which I know he felt like gave one away. Xander ended up taking the lead by 1 at that point. I think in years past, you might have seen Wyndham be like, here we go again. It's happening again. I'm messing it up. I'm going to let this thing go. Xander's going to clip me. He comes back, hits a bomb on 8, gets it up and down, picks that back up, stuffs it on 9. I mean, he birdies 5 of the next 8, got a little help from Xander. But I truly believe that a year or 2 ago that probably wouldn't have been the case for him, and it's all just been a mental deal. And he's talked a lot with Max and Joe Griner about what they did to kind of come out of that and be a little nicer to yourself and believe in yourself a little bit more, and it's paid huge dividends.
Well, we've certainly, we've talked to enough pros and caddies over the years that have talked to us about, like we've gotten an inside look at some of the mental battles that a professional golfer, a golfer at that level faces. And golf's such a brutal game. It just beats the shit out of you all the time. Even if you're not good at golf, right? You still think you're better than you are. Sometimes you feel like you could be better than you're playing, and you're disappointed. But so obviously there's some mental side of it. Right. But okay. One of the things we do, Sleaze, is we look at these numbers every single freaking week. I mean, we're deep diving into the betting and DFS landscape. And it looks like Wyndham Clark turned into a different iron player in October. If you look at his PGA Tour career from 2018 up until October of 2022, he would have like spike iron weeks, right? Where he would, things would click and it would go well. He was still hitting the ball great off the tee. Like he had the PGA Tour tee game, right? Bombing it, high carry, just monster drives, and he'd gain strokes off the tee, and he was always a super underrated putter. But technically, did something happen? Was it the equipment change? That's been floated around a little bit. Was it a coaching thing? What happened with the irons? Because that's where we've been talking about him over the last few months going, dude, Wyndham is elevating, and it's really the irons coming together. Now he's like a total player, and he, with his distance and ability on the greens, like he is a weapon.
Yeah, that's exactly. If I was going to point to like one thing that he needed to tighten up in the past, like, and it wasn't even his long irons. Like you give him a 4-iron or 3-iron, shit, he hits 3-iron from like 250 into par 5s. It's going to fly it on the green. You know what I mean? I'm like, all right, well, not a lot of guys are doing that, so that's fine. It was more like 8-irons, 9-irons. He would make bogeys with them occasionally. It was more distance control, I felt like, and he did make an equipment change, and there's something to be said for that. I know that he felt like he get a little more consistency with the clubs, that he doesn't catch those hot ones occasionally from the first cut or you just hit one, you're like, how did that just go 9 yards further than I thought it would go? He's really tightened that up. But from a technical standpoint, like, he's not a super technical guy. He's gotten a lot of attention for that drill that he does at the beginning, of each round, where he puts the tee in the ground. He hits all of his irons off of a tee to try to stay shallow. He just wants to stay shallow. He doesn't want that club going left a whole lot through impact. And then he gets on the golf course and he doesn't even use tees on par 3s. But he's actually started working on his swing with his caddy, John Ellis, who is a great player, mini tour. I call him a Jicky Jack legend, man. The guy won a ton of events. I traveled with him. I played with him, another very, very close friend. And he's helped him a lot. He knows a lot about the golf swing. He was the assistant coach at the University of Oregon when Wyndham went up there to spend his last year. So he knows his game as well as anyone. He knows what he does when he's swinging well, knows what he's doing when he's not swinging well. And I think his brain is just like kind of cleared up from the technique stuff. Not that there may be something that's kind of, helped him become a better iron player, but I think he's just a little more free out there, where it's just a lot of like, he was playing to not mess up a lot last year. And as opposed to like, I want to play great. Like that third round I go to at Quail Hollow, one of the best ball striking rounds you probably see on the PGA Tour this year. 17 greens, 18, by a centimeter, he was on that green. 18 greens around Quail Hollow. People don't do that too often. And it just like in years past, all right, he gets to 4 under, he gets to 5 under. I feel like he would have been, let's get this to the house. I'm 5 under. This is a great round. Let's not mess up. He kept going. He's like, I want to get to 6. I want to get to 7. He ends up shooting 8 under. I just think it's more of like a mental mindset where it's like, let's play to play great, as opposed to let's play to not mess up and get this thing to the house.
I want to go back to something you kind of mentioned earlier, and you made a great comparison, I think, with Max Homa. And DB and I've actually talked about this a little bit because I do think that's a good comparison. So, like, if you're looking at Wyndham, like, what's the ceiling for him? Like, where does he go from here after getting this win? Is it, especially knowing him as well as you do?
Yeah, and I maybe will catch some flack for this because people say, oh, he's biased. He's one of his good friends, so he's kind of pumping his tires a little bit. But I've said this a couple years ago. I think maybe after one of the weeks that I caddied for him, I was like, dude, this is a top 10 player in the world. It's a top 10 player in the world. That's the ceiling. You look at him, you guys know all the stats, right? The iron play was the one kind of weakness. That's an easy thing to fix, right? You put a little time in, you find something technique-wise, maybe it's an equipment change. You can get better at that really quickly, which is time, energy, effort, right? You know what you can't learn to do? Have 192-mile-an-hour ball speed. You can't learn to do? Have great touch around the greens and just have impeccable feel. He just made a putter change, which has really helped him as well. He's always been a great putter, but how golfers get. Like, it's kind of gets wishy-washy on that. He's feeling great with the putter. Like, there's nothing you can point to in his game like, that's going to really hurt him. Oh, he's crazy crooked off the tee. Or he is awful around the greens. We see some great ball strikers on the PGA Tour. Victor Hovland comes to mind. Probably not, self-admittedly, not the greatest around the greens, right? There's a weakness you could point to for him. I just can't. There really isn't one in Wyndham Clark's game. And I keep going back to it, but like, I would have said the same thing about Max Homa a number of years ago. And he was nowhere near the top 10 in the world, right? Wyndham's up to, I believe, number 31 in the world right now. I see that going higher and higher. I made a prediction like a year or so ago. I was like, this kid's going to be an American team player at some point. I don't know if it's going to be next year, then the next year, whenever it clicks, whenever he gets going, he's going to be a Ryder Cup, President's Cup type kid. And I think the weight off of his shoulders right now that he feels, I talked to him, I FaceTimed with him like right after the win, and it was almost like tangible. You could almost like feel it and see it like, oh my God, I did it. And he's been close before, but he's been close at like opposite field events, right? In Puerto Rico, and he's battling Brian Gay. No offense to Brian Gay. That's different than a Sunday afternoon with Xander Schauffele at Quail Hollow. It's not the same. So I think it's almost even sweeter that he did it when he did it, because there's no faking it around that place or on that stage.
I was going to ask you if I knew you talked to Wyndham after, but I was going to ask if you were a part of the celebration or anything. You weren't able to make it out to Charlotte, I guess.
Yeah, so actually I give him credit for this. There's been times in the past where he's been in contention going into Sunday, and like all of a sudden friends and family get on a text like, yo, let's fly out there, things like that. I want to be there when he wins for the first time, and they've done it. And he hasn't closed the door, you know what I mean? So Wyndham turned his phone off starting on Saturday afternoon. I got a text from his caddy about it, like, yo, hey, I told Dub to turn his phone off, so he's not going to be like, looking at all these texts and things like that. But can you please tell everyone, nobody fly out, nobody come out here. He wants to stay in his zone. He wants to stay in his pocket, and he wants to do this on his own. He doesn't want any of that added pressure, which is, something that he hadn't done in the past either. But we got now that he's back in Scottsdale, he came back, and we got a very nice celebration planned for him tomorrow night. Sure. So looking forward to that.
Now, I got one more question on Wyndham, and then I want to talk about you and Colt real quick. Any off the course interesting stories about Wyndham? I will say that of some of the people that we've interviewed in the past, it has been said Wyndham has quite the game with the ladies. That I don't know how much you want to confirm or deny, or how much detail you'd like to give, but any other off the course stories about old Wyndham?
I'll be very diplomatic with my answer. Let's just say my boy, like father, like son, he can get distracted pretty easily, right?
Yeah.
And to his credit, man, right now he's got a great girlfriend. They've been together for a while now. Alicia, I honestly think she's played a role in all this, just kind of like grounding him, like a little bit of consistency, and like a class girl at that. So I think that's helped a lot. Dub, off the course stuff, he'll tell you he's a great basketball player. Oh, I played in high school. I was on the same team with Max McCaffrey, Christian McCaffrey, right? He went to high school with the McCaffrey boys, so he's tight with all those guys. I've been in the gym with him. I've seen him shoot. He's got a little like from the hip. I think I could block it with my elbow if I wanted to get it. Like so, taper all of the. He is a very good athlete, by the way. He can run and jump and do all that type of stuff. But when he starts getting into these little spiels, he's a confident dude. You know what I mean? He'll tell you what a great basketball player he is. Just check him on that. Real quick. Also, his gin game. He loves to play. He'll play gin with you for 6 hours. That's kind of like what we like to do after a round, whatever. He'll play, and he used to be terrible, and now I think he's gotten to be very good. So he's got some good gin games out there. He and his caddy have a little deal, a running bet for the entire year, and at the end of the year they added up. And I know his caddy John Ellis took a little hit on his payment last year based on the gin totals. So nothing too juicy there, but just a couple of little tidbits.
Well, yeah, I mean, makes sense. Right, we're going to be professional here, obviously.
Of course,
no one would expect anything less. All right, so speaking of being professional, you and Colt, great show. We've actually had Colt on the Tour Junkies podcast a while back. Now, did he big time us last week on the chipping range with Joel Damon at the Wells Fargo? 100%. I don't even.
Wow.
I mean,
he was only 2 feet from me.
I don't even know that I don't even think he saw us, and we'd spent an hour chipping ball. Hell, Pat had a bump and run competition with Joel Damon minutes before, and Colt walks up and acts like I thought we had like an invisibility cloak on or something.
Disappointing for the brand. That's not what we're about, boys.
I do think he was getting reprimanded though by he was on the it was on the heels of being reprimanded by after his Phil Mickelson situation on Twitter last week.
A little Twitter spat, yeah.
He was coming back telling the boys that he still had his job. So I mean, understood. But anyway, so Pat and I've been doing this a while. You guys have been doing it a minute. You guys have great chemistry. Probably far better chemistry than me and Pat, honestly, even though we've been doing it forever. But so I would love to hear like just kind of how that goes. Like people, when people get a chance to talk to me and Pat about it, they're like, do you guys ever fight about anything? Do you agree on everything, or like who, how did it kind of start, and what's the dynamic like, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can go back as far as you want in terms of like how it started. I'll give you the quick rundown on like the radio and the podcast. Colt was kind of getting out of golf at the time, when battling some injuries, only had a handful of starts left. I could tell he was kind of looking for the next thing. He had an agent reach out about potentially doing a radio show on PGA Tour radio. Ended up getting 1 hour a week. He calls me. He's like, hey, dude, I got an opportunity. I want to do this radio show. I want you to be my co-host. I was like, yes, 100%. Well, randomly around that same time.
What were you doing at the time? Yeah.
So I had actually I knew all the PGA Tour radio guys at the time, because you rewind like 4 or 5 years earlier than that, when I quit golf, Gary McCord, who's a dear friend, came to me and he wanted to do the exact same thing. He's like, we're doing a radio show. We're doing it on PGA Tour Radio. Me and you, we're going to get this thing going. So it had cleared. It had gotten the green light. I'd met all the PGA Tour Radio guys, all this stuff. At the 11th hour, plug got pulled on kind of Gary's side. His employment at the time was like, hey, you do stuff for us, and that's it. And anyways, long story, it kind of went away. But I had relationships with all those radio guys, and like, don't worry, we're going to find something. We're going to do something. We want you to be on the channel and all this stuff. And I kind of just put it on the back burner. And then you fast forward, Colt was getting out. I was like, yes, absolutely. This is what I've been wanting to do for a long time. And then I had been getting into like some little kind of smaller podcasts at the time, just going on shows. I was doing this one for Action Network, I guess at the time. And then I had gotten a call right around that same time, a little bit before Colt came to me about doing a podcast for golf.com. They're like, hey, we want to move to digital. We want to start doing this. We'd love for you to be the guy. What do you want to do? And I was like, here's what I want to do. I want to do long form interviews with the players. I think there's a lot of really cool guys out there that the world doesn't know that they're cool. I want to do like behind the scenes, kind of get to know these guys like it's buddies sitting down and talking. They said, perfect, done, let's go. So I was slated to do that. Colt calls me about the radio, and I was like, well, hey, by the way, I got this podcast coming up I'm about to start doing. Why don't you hop on with me on that as well? And it'll be kind of like, the same quote unquote brand or whatever. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. And then kind of they started firing right around the same time, coincidentally. But that's kind of the genesis, I guess, of how it all started. And then, yeah, Colt and I have known each other for a long time, man. I mean, we probably crossed paths back in junior golf, but we weren't like buddies or anything. But then you get to college, TCU, SMU, right down the road from each other. We'd bump into those guys, hang, have fun. We developed a relationship. And then I moved to Scottsdale right after college. He stayed in Dallas. And then about 5 years later, let's call it, he's like, hey, dude, I want to move to Scottsdale. Called me. Can you help me out with Whisper Rock? I'm going to try to get in there. So I kind of rallied some troops. He knew some other guys, got into Whisper Rock. So then we were hanging, playing, doing all that stuff. And that's kind of where it all came together.
It's beautiful, man.
Nice.
We've been in the podcast game long enough to remember we used to roster Colt on fan
Yeah.
on DraftKings. He was still doing his thing.
Harbortown, Colonial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had his spots, just like anybody does.
Yeah.
He did a couple of he didn't do it with us at that point, but I remember him he was one of the first guys to hop on a PGA DFS podcast. I don't remember who it was. I don't even think they're a podcast anymore. Colt may have tanked it, but I remember him getting on it. Pat, do you remember that?
I do, but I can't remember what it was.
You guys ever had any like big knockdown dragouts? Please?
Not really, man. Like, I'm a pretty mellow dude. I feel like we kind of have the thing, pretty much more or less figured out. There's some scheduling issues and some like traveling things. And like, he's on the road for CBS and I'm like, damn it, dude, we could be doing this podcast right here. This dude's in town and then we can't do it and things like that. Or I'm gone. So you run into little things. Dude, if you spend enough time with the same person, week in, week out, yeah, you're going to have little bickerings and stuff. But like, no big like drag them out fights or any like, I hate yous or things like that. We got a great relationship. We hang, we play golf, we hang off the course some as well. And I think there's times where he would agree where I'm like, okay, 4 or 5 days, I've seen enough. You've probably had enough of me. And I'll see you Monday, type of deal. So just, no crazy like drama to speak of.
Well, damn, I just told DB to F right off earlier today. In the
Yeah,
text.
I mean,
I did.
We fight each other and we hit each other in the face and there's been some blood, but nothing really.
Yeah. Well, y'all are so, famous for get amongst it. You say you have that phrase.
Yeah.
Who originated that though? Was it you or Colt?
That's a great question. Well, Colt, this was happening before Colt even moved to Scottsdale. So this is a big point of contention at the Rock Boys. Okay. So there's about 4 dudes that all think that they claimed this thing. Okay. It was always just like a little bit like a group text, like, yo, tomorrow noon, going to get amongst it, whatever. Hey, tomorrow night, Friday afterwards, we're going out for having drinks. We're going to get amongst. Like, everyone was just like, just your little like battle cry or whatever that you have with your boys.
Boys being dudes.
Right. And it was exactly dudes being dudes. And so then like, that was just something in my everyday vocabulary. And I like threw it out on the spot, on a podcast. Didn't think twice of it. I was like, dude, we got amongst it last night or whatever, something along those lines. And then all of a sudden I started getting tweets like, get amongst it, all this stuff. I was like, people really like this term. I'd kind of forgotten that it's like even unique because our little crew out here, we'd used it so much at the time. And then all of a sudden I was like, this should be kind of like our little battle cry, for the show. So, there's about 3 dudes that we all think we invented it. But I will say that I'll just put it this way. It originated at the Rock and it probably originated 12 plus years ago when we started saying it.
Well, and you made it famous.
Right.
So, all right. So last question, we'll get you out of here with this, and everybody needs to check out the Gravy and the Sleeves on Sirius XM as well as Golf Subpar, wherever you listen to your podcast and YouTube as well. It's great stuff. You guys do great jobs with your interviews. We love it.
Thank you, man.
But all right, so you're talking about The Rock, and you got all these pros out there. You know, it's member season. It's member guest season. Sleaze, you know, me and Pat talked about this a couple weeks ago. I got a member next weekend. Pat's coming in town for my member guest at Champions in September. So, like, we talked about some tips, right? Some things that you got to know about your partner, things you can do ahead of time, things you can do during the event. If you're getting ready to go compete in your member guest, whatever, what's something that you do? What would you advise the people out there that they need to take note of from a professional of getting amongst it like yourself?
Right. I would say there's two vitals. First being the playlist, right? Assuming you're at a place where you're going to have some music, playlist is vital. So mine is, when I'm in charge, it's very eclectic. It's kind of all over the board. We got some pop, we got some Biggie. I'm a big like 2000s era hip hop. Like that's my stuff. But then there are times, this is when I need to really, really get serious. I mean, dude, this thing, if I put it on shuffle, it's like 6 different personalities kind of made this list.
Yes.
I'm big into like the ballads, dude. So when it's closing time, when it's jammy time, night dirt nap for the competition, that's when Whitney comes out. Whitney hangs out in the green room for about the first 13 or 14. And I'm saying, bud, it's time to go. And there's only one queen that could bring us there. And that's when Whitney comes out. And she is responsible for a lot of tweets being made on 15, 16, 17, 18. Celine Dion makes a little appearance in there. I mean, I got some crazy shit on there. But like I normally, also depends on the group you're with, by the way. If I got some older gentlemen and I know like I kind of wind it back and I'm like, all right, we're going to probably eliminate the 2000s hip hop here. I got another list. Like this is easy listening. I like to, the chill vibe. I like some Bob Marley a whole lot. I'll get a little Jimmy Buffett in there. Just nothing that's going to hurt anybody's feelings out there, right? But playlist 1A, the energy that can bring, paramount. Secondly,
are you an Apple guy or are you Spotify? Which one?
I'm Apple mostly. Like I download and make my own
right,
stuff.
I'm gonna share our playlist, our member guest playlist with you because it's very similar. Sans the Whitney stuff, but I love that idea.
You gotta add Whitney in, bud. You gotta add Whitney. I'll send you a few ballads. You gotta have. The Shallows by Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper. Bring that thing in if you want to get super weird with it. That's nice. People don't know how to handle that. Yeah, share me your list. I'll show you mine.
Okay. All right. We'll see
what we do. And I'm too cheap to buy the Spotify without commercials. So I don't want to hear commercials when I stand over the ball. My second thing is the booze. Obviously, you got to have, right? I'm a transfusion guy. That's pretty much strictly what I drink. So you gotta just balance that, right? The whole goal is to you got to peak. You got to get to the peak.
Get your levels right. But
then don't over peak. That's a problem. But then don't let yourself drag down. So it's a race to get there. And then however you want to maintain, there's a variety of ways to maintain. You just got to stay right there, right in the pocket, right in the pocket. And then you just stay there. But if you got if you got that combination paired up at the same time, it's problems for everybody.
Yeah. Well,
that's professional advice right there. Blues and then music. Yeah.
I mean, we knew you'd be the guy to ask. And listen, we appreciate you hanging out with us, stopping by the Better Sports Network and the Tour Junkies Golf Show. It's been a pleasure. Love to have you back on. Love to get you on the podcast as well at some point. You and Cole keep doing your damn thing. And get amongst it out there and, do your thing, man. And tell Wyndham that the Tour Junkies boys, we love him. We've been riding him hard. Now, did we have him on our fucking betting card last week? No, it was the 1 week in the last 6 weeks. We haven't, but it's okay. We're happy. We're happy.
Yeah, I will relay that message. I will relay that message to him. And thank you guys so much for having me. You guys do great work. Thank you so much for having me on. And we'll do it again sometime. Shout out to Dub on that big first win.
Yes. Shout out, Dub. Thank you. Sleaze, Drew Stoltz, and the Tour Junkies Golf Show off to a hot start. We'll be right back. We're going to hit you up with some AT&T Byron Nelson intel. So stay right here on the Better Sports Network.
We got a question in here from Chill. It said, do we like Deuce Vaughn with his story in the open backfield in Dallas? Think he could have a big pass catching role?
So hey, buddy. How's it going? Hey, it's going good. This is Dad. My phone wasn't working. Look at here, man. You want to come to work with me next week?
I wouldn't mind that at all.
So what do you guys think about Deuce Vaughn getting drafted by the Dallas Cowboys? His dad's there. What do you guys think about his potential upside for fantasy?
As far as his dad being there, I think you can take one of two approaches here, and it's the college homer rating their college players in the NFL kind of approach. Either he's a homer, he's too close to it, he can't look at it objectively, or he knows the ins and outs of this player better than anybody else in the entire world, right? So if there is anybody who knows what he can bring to a team, it is his father. There's also it's his father. Can he look past his bias towards his son? I tend to lean towards he works for this team. It's his job. Of course, there's faith in his son, but there's probably a role for him. That being said, I think it's Tony Pollard's backfield. He'll play a complementary role. I don't think we see even RB2 numbers out of him. And there's a real chance they bring Zeke back as well, right? I don't think they're done.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I think Zeke still being out there, it's very likely that he returns to Dallas over any other team. I think if you were putting odds on it, you'd probably say right now it's Dallas. And if that happens, there's no place for Deuce Vaughn in this at all. And even if Zeke doesn't return, I have a lot of trouble feeling that there was more than, change of pace, low end change of pace roll, like 3, 4, 5 touches a game kind of a thing.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. We would need to see him take a massive step up to be really considered here for fantasy, but could definitely help that Dallas run offense, because I don't think it can really run all the way through Tony Pollard. I think they do need other options there.
Tee off with the Tour Junkies on Better Sports Network.
All right, welcome back to the Tour Junkies Golf Show on the Better Sports Network. Such a tremendous conversation with Drew Stoltz. The sleaze, all things Wyndham Clark, all things golf subpar, and their relationship with Colt Knost. That was fantastic. He's easy to talk to.
He is.
Easy to look at, easy to talk to. Just a handsome guy.
Yeah.
Great jaw, great golf game,
okay.
Funny. I mean, he's just everything that, a lot of us want to be. Drew Stoltz.
I feel like there's a little bit of a man crush going on here between you and
sleaze. Yeah, there kind of is. I mean, he's got, I would love to be that good at golf, travel around the world, do golf things.
Yeah.
Have, all these PGA Tour friends, live in Scottsdale, have a show. Like, what?
I mean, who wouldn't?
It sounds like a nice gig. This week, we are at the AT&T Byron Nelson. TPC Craig Ranch is the host site. They're in McKinney, Texas, right there around Dallas area. And boy, this is Pat. We're in the dog days right now. I mean, this is where this elevated event situation in the middle of the major season situation produces an event where we have very few stars. It's been tough. We're getting withdrawals by the hour here. Jordan Spieth has withdrawn with an apparent wrist injury. We won't talk a lot about that this week. I'm sure we'll talk about it next week, covering the PGA Championship. But you got Scotty Scheffler up top at plus like 3.5. Tyrrell Hatton, Jason Day, Tom Kim, Hideki Matsuyama. Your back-to-back defending champ, KH Lee, going for the three-peat. Could be the first potential 3-time in a row PGA Tour winner since Steve Stricker did it at the John Deere Classic. KH Lee doing his thing. It's a tough scene. I guess what do we need to know about TPC Craig Ranch? It's kind of a benign golf course. It's a birdie contest. KH Lee has won the last 2 years at a combined total of 51 under par. Yes, you heard that right. 51 under par in 8 rounds. Can you imagine?
Yeah. Well, no, I can't imagine.
I wonder if I played 8 rounds at my home course and I got 2 shots a hole, if I would shoot 51 under par. I don't know. I have to do the math on that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a par 71 this year. They've changed it. It was a par 72. So one of the par 5s they've taken away from them. So maybe there'll only be like 20 under instead of 25 under.
Well, I did see one Vegas sportsbook total over under this morning on Twitter was 22.5. So I think that is factoring in the one par 5 is now a 490-yard par 4 for these guys. That'll make it a little bit tougher. But ultimately, what you need to know from a handicapping standpoint is it's going to be bombs away. These fairways are soft. There's rain coming in. I think that's going to soften them up even more so. which is going to help the long hitter. The fairways are wide, the rough is very minimal. So again, helping the long hitter, but everyone's going to hit a lot of fairways here. Everyone's hitting a lot of greens. I think the green and regulation clip is some of the highest on the PGA Tour, Pat. They average like 13 greens in reg per round out here last year. And so you've got large greens. A lot of people are going to be hitting them. You don't really have to scramble very much here because you're probably not going to miss these greens. And you just got to either hit it close and make your putts or not hit it quite as close and don't 3-putt. Make a couple of long ones here and there. 2-putt the par 5s when you get on in 2-putt a par 4 if you get there in, one. I think there's one shorter par 4 out there. So it's a long iron. There's some long iron shots out there. The par 3s play pretty long. I was out there last year in person, walked the course and saw it play a few rounds. It was interesting. I remember Pat Perez standing on a tee box with Pat Perez, a 240-yard, slightly uphill par 3, and Pat Perez kind of pissing and moaning about what head cover he'd have to take off to get to the green here. But it's you got to go low. I mean, you got to make birdies. So what are your thoughts on betting Scotty Scheffler at 3.5 to 1?
No. I mean, look, we're trying to have a little fun when we bet here. It's like John Rahm, at the Mexico Open a couple of weeks ago. We just, it's not fun. It's not fun to do that. I mean, I get it. Scheffler is certainly the best player in this field. And then when you take away Jordan Spieth having his withdrawal, it makes it even a little bit easier for him to win. But I just, no, I'm gonna stay away from Scheffler. If he wins, fine, whatever.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna be upset like I am with that not having Wyndham Clark. I can say that.
Yeah,
it's a lot different. So.
I will say with Scheffler, I think there's a difference between him and Rahm. If you look at their stats right now, like obviously both of them are playing tremendous. The ball striking out of both of them is incredible. The short game out of Scotty has been incredible. But the putter is the one thing that where Scotty looks kind of halfway human. He's like a little better than average. He's not great. John Rahm's putter, if you look, has been incredible.
Amazing.
It's been like just unbelievably hot. And with a birdie fest like this, the putter has to be good like that. And Scotty's played here 2 years, played here both times has been at TPC Craig Ranch. His best finish was a 15th. And in those 2 years combined, he's lost over 3 strokes on the greens. That's where Scotty is going to look human here. That's where Scotty can get passed by any schmuck in the field who has a great putting week. So I definitely think it's let's talk about a couple names up top, but then I think after that, it's really a long shot, possible situation, which is refreshing because we've had so many short numbers. Now watch Scotty come out here and win this freaking thing again. Who are the guys up top, just in a couple of outrights that like kind of up, into that 30, 40 to 1, maybe as long as that? Who are you looking at right now?
Well, before Spieth withdrew, and you were on this early too. Tyrrell Hatton was at about 16 to 1. Now he's down to 12 to 1, but I still like Hatton in this field. We saw him play well last week at Quail Hollow, and he's just, he's been playing fantastic all year. I like Hideki. Now I know you're not a huge Hideki fan, and Hideki brings a lot of variance. He brings a lot of risk when it comes to potential injuries and whatever else. But I still like Hideki this week, and I like him at 25 to 1. You may even be able to get him a little better than that. So, up top, those are really two of my favorites. Now, the one that I'm afraid of like not being on that I feel like he could win this is Tom Kim. And he's right around like 20 to 1. Tom Kim's kind of the, he's the FOMO play. He's the one that I don't want to miss out and have him win, and he's not on my card. So those are really the three I'm kind of eyeing up top here.
Yeah, you know what, Pat? We recorded our podcast last night. You talked about Hideki. I'm warming on Hideki a little bit.
Oh wow, okay.
Now I still don't think he's going to be chalk like you said in DFS, but I'm warming a little bit on the possibility of Hideki. It doesn't take a lot for me to come over on the Hideki side. I'm usually willing to.
Yeah. You're.
Okay. Well, I that's kind of the outright thought process. Let's talk about first round leaders because it is an option. It is a possibility. Now we've seen some super low scores. I think what's Sebastian Munoz shoot out here one time?
I think 61.
61.
Yeah.
So we've seen some low ones. What do you think about first round leader options?
Well, if you look at the last 2 years, we have definitely seen most of the low rounds come out of the morning guys. So I think I'm going to be looking at morning tee times, and the ones that I have listed here are all morning guys. And then I do think potentially we have a weather wave. because we're looking like we're going to see a little bit of weather this week. And when you do, and it looks like maybe in the morning. And one of the reasons you do get lower scores in the morning anyways, because you might have softer greens, just with, even if there's no rain, but just you got, a little wetness on the greens, it softens them up, soft fairways. So I think you do tend to see some of the lower scores come out of the morning wave. So these three guys I'm looking at, all morning guys. Okay. Seabest, Christian Bezuidenhout. I like him at 70-1. He's a guy that, he can go low at any time. All right. I believe he was top 25 here last year.
Seabest, yeah.
So I do like Seabest. Also, guy that we saw play well last year, great ball striker and can score a lot of birdies. This guy's a birdie maker. Nate Lashley is at 75-1. He was T12 here last year, I believe. So I like Nate Lashley. And then the last one, this is kind of a little bit of a local guy, a Texas guy. Kramer Hickok is at 110-1. Another guy last week at Quail had a good first round. So I like Kramer Hickok as sort of a longer shot play at 110-1. So those are my three that I'm eyeing.
Nice. All right. I really like the Nate Lashley call, especially. I like Seabest too. All right, let's get into, we got to do our cash lineups. Before we do that, we got to hit you with a quick, just the tip. We're talking about just a quick little nugget to help you become a better golf better or DFS player. And I'm going to make this one pretty short and sweet because I don't want to whine about it anymore. But there was a lesson I kind of learned myself that I was reminded of myself with the Wyndham Clark situation. And that is like, if you're bullish on a guy just in general, and you feel like this guy has done something that has leveled up his game, which Wyndham Clark clearly started to do in October with the irons, which was the one missing piece. If he has all the other boxes checked and he's playing well and you're betting on him and it's just not quite hitting, the dominoes just quite not falling where you need them to, I think he kind of, there's an element of I'm pot committed here when it comes to, putting together your outright card, especially when he's at a 78, a longer number than you've kind of been betting him in the 40s, 50s before. Like, even in a stronger field, elevated event last week, I should have just realized, like, okay, Wyndham didn't have the best week the week before when I thought he was going to run away with it, but he's just been so good. He's been so solid. I'm pot committed. I'm committed to this guy's year on the tour. It could happen at any moment because he's that damn talented. You kind of have to just do it. And you can't have too many of those guys in a year. Like, you got to have maybe 1, 2, maybe 3.
Well, I mean, it's like a wife, you're married to her, you're married to this player, you really shouldn't have multiple ones, so you just kind of have to, you're married, you're in the relationship, DB, you're in the relationship. All right. Maybe I shouldn't say wife. maybe it's you're in a relationship with, it's your fiance. I don't know, whatever. You got to stay committed to it. You can't break away.
Yeah, you're right. And if you have too many of those,
you didn't stay committed last week.
I didn't. If you have too many of those guys, then you end up having too many outrights on it just doesn't work. So I think you got to remember that. So lesson learned there. Before we get out of here, Pat, we got to do a quick cash game lineup. We got like a minute and a half to do a cash game lineup, which is scary because I don't even like this tournament to do cash games. So this is very scary. It doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of sure things here. So let's start here. I'm going to go KH Lee, 9,300, whatever. He's back-to-back winner. He's probably not missing the cut.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and get Kuchar in there. I think Kuchar is a very solid cash play here, and that's going to get us down to 7,900.
I'm going to go Dylan Wu, the better Wu, who's been lights out at 7,400. He's going to be super chalky in GPP tournaments. We're not worried about that in cash. I'll go Dylan Wu.
Okay, I like that. All right, I'm going to go with a guy that no, he worries me a little bit. How about this? I will go with I like Jonathan Bramlett. We'll go with Bramlett here.
Jonathan Bramlett? You mean Joseph Bramlett?
Sorry, Joseph Bramlett.
Is that his brother? Yes, I love Bramwagon myself. Yeah. T7 here a couple of years ago. Big fan of him. Okay, I'm going to hit I'm going to go Seabez, 8K. You already talked about him. Christian Bezuidenhout, first round leader, 8,000, great putter. Had a good finish here. I like him.
All right. Man, see, I'm just not a huge fan of this 8K range.
Yeah, but it's safety somewhat.
Yeah, it is a little bit safe. I'd like to I think we just go Steven Yeager.
I was thinking about that. I mean, this is if you put this lineup in a GPP tournament, this is super chalk. Very chalk.
Yeah.
It
And
might be
Jaeger's,
almost-
he makes a lot of cuts, 15 out of 18 cuts
Yeah.
this year.
It might be too chalky for a cash lineup, but we'll go with it. All right, so that gives us KH Lee, Matt Kuchar, Christian Bezadenhout, Stefan Jaeger, Joseph Bramlett, not Jonathan Bramlett, and Dylan Wu. And that is the Tour Junkies golf show for this week. PGA Championship next week, the second major of the year from Rochester, New York at Oak Hill. We're going to be pumped about that one. Like I said, itty-bitty tiny review of the Byron Nelson, and we're going to give you all you want for the PGA Championship. So come back next week on the Better Sports Network. May your screens be green and bend over your bookies. See you. Out.
The Detroit Lions select Sam Laporta, tight end, Iowa.
Had to go with your boy Sam Laporta there to pair with TJ Hawkinson.
Sammy, I couldn't double down on rookie tight ends. I think that's taking a little too far.
This could be one of the most exciting rookie tight end classes in a while, just based on the archetypes of these guys, and the Dalton Kincaids and the Sam Laportas. Obviously, Green Bay drafted two themselves with Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave. So after Kincaid, I would say is probably the consensus with tight ends. Like, who do you like as far as the best ball, like end of best ball? Do you like Laporta, or is there anybody else you like more?
I do like Laporta. We're looking for guys that can be a top 2 target on their team. So any path, any argument you could make, right? So you can make the argument that Dalton Kincaid is going to be a top 2 target with after Stephon Diggs. You can make an argument that with Jamison Williams suspended, now Sam Laporta is just going to play straight up wide receiver. He looks like a wide receiver. Why can't he line up out wide at split end, right? It's like Marvin Jones and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I would also throw another name in the ring, and I don't mind, since we're doing this for the fans, for the kids. He's still on the board. Luke Musgrave on your Packers. They're not super loaded at wide receiver. We like the guy Reed they drafted, but you never know. So why can't Luke Musgrave be a big slot? In fact, they drafted 2 tight ends, Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave. Tucker Kraft is more of an inline guy. They might just go 2 tight ends right away. Tucker Kraft inline, Luke Musgrave in the slot. Why can't he be a target monster for Jordan Love? So those are the guys, those are the conditions that you need for a rookie tight end to succeed. They need to not only be the best pass catching tight end on the team, but a top 2 pass catcher on the team outright. That's how you get Kyle Pitts. Evan Ingram as a rookie was top 5 because Odell Beckham Jr. hurt his knee 4 weeks into the year. So that's the formula. We're looking for guys that can actually be a top target right away. Otherwise, we're playing the sit and wait long-term game, which is what you're doing with guys like Michael Mayer.